Hi, I'm Matt.
And I'm Dee Dee. We are the hilarious outcome of opposing brains sharing a mutual desire to share knowledge and positive thinking about hemp and cannabis.
We are here to tear down the walls built by Big Pharma and other big companies that seek to keep the human race in fear and divided.
We are here to shatter the myths about hemp and cannabis and change the stigma of this amazing plant. Welcome to Hemp and Happiness with the Hemp Queen
And Emperor
podcast. Join us as we venture into this misunderstood and the unknown.
Hello, happy hempsters out there. Welcome to another edition of Hemp and Happiness. This is going to be a much different edition than what you're probably used to. In case, if you're watching the audio-visual file, you'll see that Dee Dee's gone through a miraculous change in every way. I'm just kidding. Dee Dee is actually out sick today. We had a recording prepared, and she completely lost her voice. So there's absolutely no way she could have done the podcast. We're a little behind in putting our content out. So we're going to switch gears and talk about something kind of personal to me today. And I decided that the best way to do this would probably be to reintroduce our store lead who works at both of our stores, our 812 Hemp in Indiana, as well as our 502 Hemp in Louisville. Thank you, losing my mind. And this is Cannabeth. So Cannabeth, refresh the audience as to who you are, what you do, and I think you have an exciting announcement as well. So go ahead.
I'm Beth Pinotti. I work at 502 Hemp on Moser Road in Middletown and also at the 812 Hemp that we just opened in Clarksville. I am a CBD consultant, THC consultant. If you need help trying to figure out what product's right for you, you can come and see me. I train all the people that we have at the stores so that they know how to find a product for you as well. So you don't have to just see me. You can see anybody else at our store too.
Excellent. Beth is also a paranormal investigator.
Yes, that's my side gig.
Go ahead. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, Serious Paranormal is in Louisville, Kentucky. It's a team of investigators. We've been doing this for about 20 years now. And if you have issues with energy interferences at your home, maybe a little ghostly activity, we have people that call us, and we come and we use scientific equipment to investigate, try to find answers, try to help people manage through their experiences, things like that. We also do tours locally. We have things at EP Tom Sawyer Park on a yearly basis. That used to be Lakeland Asylum or Central State Asylum. That property, it's very active. So we have a lot of people that like to come out there at night with us and see what happens in the park once it's closed. That's a really popular place that we do. And yeah, we're hoping to have a podcast out soon. So keep your eye out for that Serious Paranormal podcast.
So you heard it first here.
Yes, first announcement ever.
Paranormal podcast coming your way.
Yes, spooky stuff.
Yes. All right. So now that we've gotten that out of the way, and the reintroduction of Beth, I have decided that for this episode, I want to tell the story of when I was shot. This is a story that a lot of people ask me about. There's a little bit to it. There's actually a lot to it. And I'm not big on telling the story. It's not my favorite thing to talk about. I do inject a lot of humor when I tell it, because it's such a serious thing. But I think that the story needs to be told. There's been some recent events. I've had some health issues. I'm not dying or anything, y'all. But it's kind of woken me up and made me realize that I should tell the story. It should be recorded, and I should share it with the people that are important to me, who are the listeners of this podcast, as well as my friends and family, who most of them have heard this. So I'm going to dive in. Beth is going to ask questions as she sees fit that you all might ask. Afterwards, if you all have any questions, please feel free to message us in whatever platform it gets to us, be it social media or YouTube, or are we on Spreaker now? Or
I don't know.
Yeah, we're on pretty much everything at this point. So at any rate, just qualifying though, a couple things I don't talk about. I don't talk about the afterlife. I just don't think it's appropriate. I did die during this event. I think that's a very personal thing that shouldn't necessarily be shared. I think it's a good thing that there's a reason why you don't know what happens when you die. And it's not my responsibility to share that. And even if I could share it, I don't know that the experience is describable. So I don't talk about it.
I was going to ask you, did you have an experience?
Yeah.
So you did, and that would be very personal and different for everybody, probably.
Yeah, but I am going to tell you all about what dying feels like, which is the most unique experience. I just don't talk about what happens after that.
Gotcha.
So,
that's for me to talk about, not you, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure. Yes. Another thing is, there's a lot of things here that are maybe a little disturbing. So if you're easily disturbed or upset, you should probably not listen to this podcast. Also, if you don't like the way I deal with the humor of the situation, too bad. Life is, like the Shakespearean play, As You Like It. It's a comedy. It's a tragedy. It's both. It really all is contingent on how you interpret your experiences and how you choose to live your life. So with that being said, I think it was August. It was the first week of August in 2002. I was working on flipping a house with another individual, and we were way behind. I was contracted to build log cabins, work on log cabins in Southern California. So I was under the gun. And what do you do when situations like that arise? Of course, you go on a fishing trip, which is exactly what we did. So this person and I'm not going to mention his name because I didn't get permission. I don't want to, bring him into it. Went on a fishing trip and we drank a lot. We caught a lot of fish. We had a great time. And actually on the ride home, we really talked a lot about this house and how we needed to get it done and how I was days away from leaving for California and we didn't have it market ready. So we thought it would be a good idea to not even go home, just to go directly to the job site and work on this house, which we did. And I think we had a couple beers and we smoked some pot and we worked till right around midnight. And right about that time, we were packing up tools in my truck, and a group of, I think, five men walked by and asked what time it was. I told them what time it was. They disappeared. About 2-3 minutes later, they walked back and produced a gun and robbed us.
Were you at the house?
Yes.
When that happened? Okay.
We were at the house. So this was a professor's neighborhood in Columbus, Ohio, pretty much on the OSU campus. Not a bad neighborhood at all. Mm-hmm. Close to the city, but this was a nice house. This wasn't a student house by any means. This was a house that would probably go to a professor or someone of that caliber. It was an older home, older neighborhood. But anyway, so we gave them what we had. And one thing that I did not give them was my cell phone, because I didn't particularly want to, because I fully intended to call the police as soon as they'd left. And after that, they patted me down, found my phone, took it. And on the pretty much when we thought it was over, and even the guy I was with said, "Man, you have everything that we have." The guy holding the gun put the gun point blank to the back of my head and pulled the trigger. And at that point, which he wasn't expecting it, or my partner wasn't expecting it. I wasn't expecting it. I don't even know if the rest of the people in the group were expecting it that was robbing us, because the last thing I remember was thinking to myself, did I just get shot? And trying to swing around and punch the guy, which of course did not happen. But the last thing I saw as I was swinging around was just everyone running. And then I hit the ground after that, and realized I'd most definitely gotten shot in the head, and I was in real trouble. The first thing that I noticed was that I was not breathing, which is weird, because your body makes more noise than you realize when it breathes. Just breathing is quite a noisy activity, but because we do it from birth, we don't notice. The second thing I noticed was that my heart was not beating, because again, your heart is incredibly loud. We don't realize this because, again, it's just a sound that we're completely immersed in our entire lives. But when it's gone, you notice. Mm-hmm. And I remember laying there. I was unable to close my eyes, just laying there and thinking, it's so silent, because without breathing and without my heart beating, it's just quiet.
Do you feel like it really stopped beating at that point and you stopped breathing at that point, or that you were maybe out of your body and you did not hear or feel those things?
Oh no, I was still within my body. Mm-hmm. I mean, my brain had not died yet. Mm-hmm. Just my motor functions had ceased to function. You know, there was a brief moment maybe of panic, and then really just an overwhelming calming. And again, you know, I tried to shut my eyes, but I couldn't. So I just slowly watched everything fade away, you know, until there was my eyes didn't work anymore. So anyway, then I came back, and when I came back, that was quite an experience, because the first thing that happened was I took an enormous breath, the biggest breath that I can ever think of taking in my life, so much so that I felt like my chest rose. I don't know if it did or not. And my heart started beating again. So I thought, okay, well, here we go. So I'm not dead, but I'm in trouble. So I thought the best thing to do would just be to not move, which I did. And after a while, no one was coming around. I was just there by myself. And
what happened to the guy you were working with? He took off.
So when the gunshot went off, he took off running, which he, to my knowledge, to this day has not forgiven himself for. Why? I mean, that's up to him.
That's instinct. Yeah. Right, I mean, right. Run away.
And that's what I told him. I said, well, what were you going to do? Say, yeah, me next?
Right.
Or I want to get shot too?
Right.
Of course you're going to run. He went into shock. Mm-hmm. He hid for probably, I think, somewhere between 20 and 40 minutes in a shed or something before he came to his senses and found a house and called 911.
Wow.
So I was there, you know, somewhere around 45 minutes to an hour laying there.
That's amazing that you survived that.
So then a single officer showed up. So during this time, I've been laying there for so long, I thought, well, I might have to try to get myself out of this. Let me see if I can move. So the first thing I did was move my toes around a little bit, and they kind of worked, and I moved my fingers, and my fingers kind of worked. And I just tried to very, very slowly, gently move. And I seemed to be able to move a little bit. So I thought, well, hey, I'm not like, I can move. I have some control of my body. So that's good. So anyway, so then this police officer shows up, and the driveway had not been paved yet, it was on gravel. And I can hear his footsteps, there's a crunching, and he's circling around me with a notepad, taking notes.
He thought you were dead.
Yeah. Not looking, not making eye contact with me, just walking around. And then so after like the second or third lap, I thought to myself, he doesn't know I'm still alive.
Yeah. Because most people do not survive a shotgun to the head. Right.
So I was like, I got to let this guy know. So I said, hey, man, are you going to call an ambulance or something? And right when I did that, he was like, oh my God. Oh. And he just started freaking out, got on the radio, we need an ambulance here now.
Right.
And, so the next thing I know, I was close to OSU. So they took me obviously to OSU, Ohio State University Hospital, which was a very good hospital. I imagine still is. I have several friends actually that graduated from there, with their medical degree. So anyway,
wow, that's
yeah. So the whole time, and I mean, he's just out of his mind. And as they're picking me up, he goes, I've been on the force over 20 years and I've never seen anything like this. And I'm thinking to myself, oh shit, this is really bad.
Yeah.
So, so this, so also when they picked me up, I realized I was in a pool and I was soaking wet. And what I came to realize was I was in a pool of my own blood and, and brain fluid and all kind of this and that. So, and I did I was weird because I felt it dripping off me. So anyway, so then I'm in the ambulance and the first thing I asked the people that are working on me in the ambulance, I said, hey man, like how bad is it? And the ambulance driver says, man, it's nothing. Like that bullet bounced right off your head. You're going to wake up tomorrow feeling like you got the worst hangover of your life. And I'm like, and I go, are you serious? And he says, yeah. And I thought, okay, cool. Like maybe it's not that bad.
Right.
So then they get me in, they pull me into the emergency room, and this doctor looks at me and goes, oh my God. And yeah. And I was like, what the fuck? Like, I'm not being given a story, like a good story, true story here. So,
because two people have acted in complete shock, and the ambulance driver or EMT is saying, oh, you're going to be fine. You're good.
So, and I didn't realize this at the time, and I'm not sure that it's this way. And just to qualify, I'm not blaming anyone for this, but the very first thing they did was sew up the hole in the back of my head as best they could, put a neck brace on me, and they put me in recovery. And the reason why they did that is because, as I learned later, like if you die on the operating table, there's a higher chance of a lawsuit. So they looked at me and was like, this guy's dead. He's just not dead yet.
Wow.
So but
you're talking fine and everything.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it gets better. It gets better, right? So they're like, oh, sew him up, put him in over here. Mm-hmm. So then they do that, and a doctor comes to visit me, and it's a young Asian woman doctor, super nice. And she starts going, she's like, you've been shot in the head. The bullet's still in your head. We've sewn you up. We're going to do the best we can for you, yada, yada, yada. Do you have any questions for me? And when she said that, I said, well, funny you should ask. I do have a question for you. Am I going to die? And I asked just that way, very matter-of-factly. And I said, and I followed that up with, I've been told a lot of different things between now and then, and I'd like to know what's going on. And she said, well, you give me an honest question, I'm going to give you an honest answer. The bullet's not going to kill you, because if the bullet was going to kill you, you'd already be dead, and you're not. But with the amount of trauma you've sustained and the amount of brain damage that you've sustained, you're not going to live the night. And I said, oh, you know what? Fair. Totally fair. Thank you for being honest. And I said, I have friends and family that I'm hoping are getting word of this. I said, I'd like to say goodbye to as many people as possible before this is all said and done. So if you could put, and I remember that I said, so if you can put me in like a refrigerator or some form of suspended animation to prolong my life, just so I can say goodbye to as many people as possible, that would be great. And she laughed and said, well, you know, I can't stick you in a refrigerator, but I'll do the best I can to keep you alive for as long as I can. I said, that's fair. So, and this was after I was arguing with the nurses not to take my belt off, because I just bought a brand new belt and they were trying to cut my clothes off. And I was like, I just bought this shit, brand new belt. It's like, and I was, by the way, I was very poor at the time. So a new belt was a serious purchase for me. Right. And yeah, I had a lot of fun with those nurses, but that's later in the story. So anyway, so they leave me in recovery and I don't die. And the next morning I'm still alive. So another doctor comes in, a surgeon, and says, hey, you know, we'd like to do surgery on you. It's risky, but we want to move forward. But we need you to sign a waiver. And I said, okay, well, you know, what are my chances of survival? And he looked at me and he said, somewhere between 20 and 40%. And I said, okay, well, what's my chances without the surgery? And he said 0%.
Oh, wow.
You're going to die if we don't operate on you. And I said, well, what are you asking me for the waiver? Like, why are you asking? Just give it to me. Like, duh, let's do this. So he gives me the waiver, which of course I sign and I agree to. And then they do the surgery where they tried to remove the bullet, but apparently, you know, my heart stopped during the surgery. So they left the bullet alone. It's not a full bullet, by the way. It's a fragment, because some of it skittered up, the jacket skittered up the top of my head. Some of it came back out and hit the back of my truck. And then some of it just went into my brain. And it's in my medulla, which is pretty much the worst place you can have a brain injury, which ironically was not the worst part. The worst part was that when the bullet fractured my skull, it shot all kinds of fragments into my frontal lobe, which there was a lot of concern of scarring. Even the surgery to remove the skull fragments and the various fragments, the scarring was a huge concern and a huge issue. Whether or not that had a long-term effect on me, I don't know. I think I passed the elevator test pretty good. You know, frontal lobe has a lot of mood regulation and stuff, but I was just as much of an asshole back then as I am today. So I have no idea.
Change anything?
Well, maybe. I mean, who knows?
Right.
I can't tell.
Can't compare.
So, yeah. So they do the surgery. Brilliant job, obviously, because I'm still here. And I wake up maybe 2 or 3 days later, and had a lot of friends and family around. And they actually had me in the prison portion of the hospital where they put the prisoners, so that there could be an armed guard there, because obviously there was concern that the individuals who tried to kill me would come back to finish me off, because at that point I'm a witness.
Right.
So I was in the hospital for 3 days after that, maybe 4. And I remember that the officer came into my room. Oh, and I had great fun between then. I mean, because I was still under the impression that I was going to die. It was just a matter of time. So, I mean, yeah. So this is the best. So then when I wake up after the surgery, I got to tell this part. I walk in and they're like, hey, we got to test your reflexes. And I had some, obviously there was some residual effect. Part of my tongue was paralyzed. Some of my face was just weird little parts of my body didn't function properly. It actually came back really quick. It was one of the first things that came back. But it was a struggle. So one of the ways they test your reflexes, as I now know, is rectally.
Oh, okay.
That is one of the core tests. And they do that by sticking their finger in your butthole.
I was a nurse and I never had to do that, thank goodness. But yeah, there's other ways to do that, but I'm sure that's.
I highly recommended against it, but they insisted. So that doctor became Dr. Jellyfinger,
Right,
which the nurses loved. And then, I was heavily medicated. So I would wake up and tell the nurses I had to pee. And they'd say, honey, you have a catheter and you just go ahead and pee. There's nothing. I woke up one evening and got myself into the bathroom, and they put a halo on your head, and with screws like into your skull when they're doing brain surgery. Well, I thought for some reason, it was a zit. Like I had this massive welt on my head and I'm squeezing it.
No.
And every time I squeeze it, I'm like I see stars, like I'm going to pass out. And then I forgot, squeeze it again. I had this one orderly fit to kill me because I kept waking up and pulling off my little monitor on my finger. Because I was like, oh, what's this? Yeah. Oh, what's this? I mean, and he had me taped from like the wrist down to keep this thing on my hand. But anyway, you gotta laugh. Like that was my thing. I was like, hey, I'm not going to sit here and wait to die. I'm going to sit here and entertain myself, enjoy myself, and hopefully give some enjoyment to the people around me.
All right. In all of this bad situation, that's what you should do.
Exactly. Right? Exactly. So I'm trying to give you all the full story here. That's why I'm kind of going back and forth, by the way. I don't have this like perfectly refined in my head. So anyway, surgery was a success. 3 or 4 days later, guard leaves and I said, well, that's all the hospitalization I need. Get me out of here. Cause I'm not going to wait for someone to come to my unguarded room to finish me off. So, they highly recommended against it, but I wasn't having it. And because I was supposed to be in California, did I mention I was already supposed to be in California pretty much at that point. And I didn't want my employer at the time to know what had happened because I was afraid I was going to lose my job in California. So I was like, having people call and say I was on a job and stuff. They ended up finding out and they still they still continued with my contract, luckily. But anyway, so I didn't have a place to live. So I checked myself out, stayed at a friend of mine's guest room, for like 2-3 weeks till I could, till I was capable enough, quote unquote, capable enough to drive myself to California.
Wow.
I hadn't regained the ability to read yet. And that includes road signs. So I actually had to kind of drive to California by prediction, by direction,
so you
and
had
general idea.
No therapy when you were released from the hospital. No. You're trying to do everything on your own and kind of testing out the waters to see what was still working and what doesn't work. And
that was the thing too, because they told me that I wouldn't be able to drive anymore,
right?
At least for a long time.
You're just stubborn. So I think that's what I'm getting through this whole story is your stubbornness.
I actually went to the DMV before I left and told them that I lost my license and paid like the $20 and got my license. Yeah. So anyway, so I made it to California. It was like a couple extra days because obviously I went the wrong direction more than once. And then I started rehabbing myself in California. Reading Dick and Jane and picking up sponges with my toes, and I just did it all on my own. And it was tough. So that was pretty much the end of that event.
How was your wound in the back? Were you able to take care of that?
Yeah. So I didn't get it wet for a while, and then I had stitches falling out of it forever. And I also had a lot of shrapnel that will work its way out of my head.
Oh my goodness.
So, I had one work its way up into my ear, to where I felt like there was like a bead in my ear, and then finally it would just pop out. It was just little scraps of, almost looked like needles. I don't know if it was from the from the gunpowder or from the bullet casing itself. They were weird little pieces of metal, like tiny, larger than a grain of sand, but not much.
Wow.
And sometimes they were like little needle looking things, but tiny little sharp little things. That was, I'd scratch my head and they'd fall out.
Yeah.
I had a big piece fall out of my head. That almost looked like a penny. Oh. I think where the impact had flattened out the casing, and instead of that piece like going into my brain, it like skittered up. Skittered up my skull.
Gosh. Well, not a lot of people survive, a gunshot wound to the head and can tell about what the after effects would be, So to have that happening, that's pretty hard to live with, though, because do you feel like you kind of never knew what was going to happen moment to moment? Like, am I going to forget how to read or forget how to move my legs? Were you ever in like fear or what is going to come out of my head next? It's kind of what I'm thinking.
I never really thought about that. I did for a long time, believe that I was going to die.
Okay.
It just hadn't happened yet.
Right. You kind of felt like eventually it's gonna.
Yeah, I was like, I can't survive. I tried to treat every day as a gift, but I was really struggling financially, struggling emotionally, struggling mentally. It was a struggle, but I didn't ever give up.
No, you didn't.
It was. I mean, there were a lot of times when I wanted to, but I never did give up. But yeah, it was that, and then the why. Because I didn't particularly at the time have a high opinion of myself, and certainly didn't think I was deserving of a second chance. And I felt like there were a lot of people who were. So, I guess you kind of do that sometimes when things happen, like, why did this happen to me? Why?
Survivor's guilt and things like that.
Why? Like, why did I come back? What's my mission? What's my purpose?
Responsibility, right.
I wasted a lot of time on that before I realized that that's not even for me to consider or contemplate. It's my job to live my best life. It's my job to help as many people as I can, share my experiences, share whatever wisdom I can. And, when that final day does come, hopefully my good deeds will be just one tick or two ticks above my bad deeds. And I would be happy with that. And that's how I've chosen to live my life, and, adopting, the Tao philosophy as best I can. I'm a shitty Taoist. I'm also a shitty Buddhist. But I love, I subscribe to the philosophies, and I do my best to live my life under those guidelines.
And we all should, that should be our purpose, is to make the world a better place.
Yeah. Well, and I think
no matter what has happened to us.
Right. And I also think that's, people get so wrapped up in the afterlife and what's going to happen when I die. What's going to happen when I die? What's going to happen when you live?
Right.
I mean, if you think about it, death is forever. Life is very short.
Right.
So if you concentrate on being a good person and having a happy life, I think the afterlife pretty much will take care of itself.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
And
and people can live in fear of death, afraid to do anything, but they're also at the same time fearing life. They're scared to do anything. So you're losing both.
Yeah, you can't. And that's another thing too, was learning how to manage fear, because after that incident, there was a long time where I had no fear of death and no fear really of anything. And that was not healthy either.
Right.
Because I would throw myself into very dangerous situations with very dangerous people in very dangerous circumstances, having no care of what happened, because I didn't care.
Right.
I mean, it didn't matter to me, whether it was today, tomorrow, next week, next year. And I was very lucky after I survived that to survive, that lack of fear. And I still don't fear death. I have no fear of death at all.
Right.
But I do realize that I have a responsibility to myself and the people around me to live a good life, be a good person, not, take acceptable risks, but not immerse myself in insane danger.
Right.
And I still temper that even today because, I work out and injure myself and push myself beyond the limits perpetually, which is something I work on. And I think part of that is because I know that you only get one shot, I mean, and, unless you subscribe to reincarnation, in which case, come back as a cow or, right on. Right. But you have to live I guess if there's any overall, like 5,000 foot moral to the story, it's, you have to live your life, and you have to live it every day like it's your last day, and accept that the next day you are who you choose to be, but your life expectancy was just reduced by 1 day.
Right. Exactly.
Exactly. And it doesn't get longer. It only gets shorter.
No, we learn that as we get older.
Yeah. Not that you should be anxious about that, but just understand how precious your time is and how important your time is. Mm-hmm. And if you were put on this earth, it's a blessing, regardless of how you might feel about it or the emotions that you might deal with. And if you don't like who you are, you don't like your situation, unless you're physically locked in a basement chained, which God forbid, I hope nobody listening to this is, you can change your life. You can wake up tomorrow and be a whole different person. It's 100% up to you, on every level. And it sounds that easy, and in some ways it's not that easy, but in some ways it is.
I think a lot of people compare their lives to other people, and I'm not as good as them, or they're better than me, or they can do this and I can't. We need to focus on being the best Beth I can be, the best Matt I can be, instead of trying to set standards that are for other people, and to focus on that. We get so outside of ourselves when we take it inside and realize we have the power to do things on our own. We are in control of our lives, our bodies, our emotions, our thoughts. Yeah. And taking that control.
Well, and a lot of that is because obviously we're societal animals, and we absorb so much from the culture around us and what we surround ourselves by. And it's even hard. It gets harder and harder to remove ourselves from that. There's a famous Buddhist monk who was quoted as saying, "I am who you think I think you want me to be."
Right, exactly.
Which is weird, crazy.
We do that but through our whole lives, though. We're always trying to people please, and our parents are setting standards for us and things like that in society.
Well, and also the Buddha, I am not what you think I am. You are what you think I am. So, we really need to think about that. And I think about those things probably more than a lot of people, because I'm awoken to it.
Right.
But you're not who other people see you as. And if you can remove yourself from your own mind, through meditation or however, as long as it's not, crazy drugs, I think you'll benefit for that as an individual, and that you can then return that to the societal setting and offer more.
Right.
So,
we all uplift each other if we're all trying to be our best.
Absolutely, 100%.
Yeah.
So,
did they ever catch the person?
A lot of people ask me that. Mm-hmm. So
I have to know.
And here, I guess there's a couple of things that I should probably clarify here. They never caught the person. At that time in my life, it was believed that it was a gang-related incident. Well, I'm just going to be completely honest here. there was some people in my life at that time that wouldn't mind seeing my death. There were people that owed me money, that were one person in particular that was quite afraid of me, who could have possibly coordinated that. We'll never know. I hope that it wasn't, because I imagine the guilt of that I don't harbor any ill feelings towards anyone, because even though this experience was horrible, I wouldn't be who I am without it. And I wouldn't be able to share and offer what I can share and offer if I had not had the experience, even though I wouldn't wish it on anyone. But the police were genuinely disinterested in finding out who did it. There was a lot of evidence that they didn't deal with or follow through with. And at this point in my life, I actually have a lot of police officer friends. And some of the things I've told them about, they can't believe. But you know what? When you sometimes you deal with disenfranchised people, disenfranchised law enforcement at the time, a lot of crime going on and strange circumstances. I think that they were just satisfied to walk away from it.
Well, and they're probably very thankful you were alive.
Yeah.
You know, and they're like, well, there's no murder here, so let's move on.
Well, and to make matters worse, not worse, but to complicate things, there were other people in my life who wanted vengeance very badly, and who maybe took to the streets to look for that, which I now know was the opposite of the energy that I would want to bring from a circumstance like this. So,
All right. So are you saying you were you're a better person now than you were back then?
I'm a better
Sound like
person.
you had a lot of enemies.
I'm a better person now than I was back then. But not that was just through working on myself, choosing to change my environment, making the choice to be who I want to be, and not letting my environment decide, or my circumstance decide who I was. Because any criminal you meet has got an awesome story on how they became a criminal, and how it's not really their fault, and how society, family, circumstances made them who they are. And they're right. But if you listen to any, true hero to our society, who contributes and puts forth effort and is caring and chooses to educate, they've got the same story.
Right.
They just chose differently.
Exactly.
And it took me a while to figure that out.
We can't choose what happens to us, but we can choose how we react to it.
Exactly.
Or how we respond to it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which also goes along the Buddhist ethos and the Tao philosophies of balance. So, yeah.
How long after the injury did you start feeling that way, more in control of your life, or that you felt like a big change was coming, like you got your power back, maybe?
Yeah, I don't know. That was really
Slowly,
gradual, because, first I had to get over the brain damage. Took years. I mean, years the brain heals, but it heals very slowly. And I'm super lucky, because I know a lot of people with TBIs and a lot of people with brain damage that are nowhere near as fortunate as me, and have to deal with a ton of side effects, including, memory loss, motor function issues, all kind of problems, that I am very fortunate not to have. So I guess it kind of came along slowly. Certainly the birth of my son changed me. The realization that, I was going to die a very mean and unhappy person changed me. And then, even then, when I thought I was doing good, I had a hard time separating myself from what I thought was my talents, because when you're angry, it gives you a ton of energy, and it's very easy to use that energy to get things done. And if you do use that energy to get things done, it will work. But if you use that energy to get things done in the wrong way, it's going to work, but it's going to make you an asshole. Right. You know, whereas choosing to use that energy in a positive, in a truly positive way, requires a lot more than just putting forth the energy. You know, I hustled for years and was very successful and turned that, you know, virtually into a small empire. Not to brag on myself. And I thought that I was helping people and, you know, by giving people jobs and training people and, you know, creating this like soldier-esque, Spartanical culture within my workforce. And we killed it. We kicked ass. I mean, nobody touched us. But at the same time, when I look back at that time now, I realized that even though I was providing, you know, financial security and safety for people, those people were terrified of me, you know, and didn't know, you know, what was coming next or what I was going to do or, you know, how it was all going to roll out. And, you know, it took a while for me to realize that financial security and that type of security isn't necessarily the best.
Yeah. Well, it's different.
It's different. But I also realized that, you know, being kind to someone doesn't mean being nice to them.
True.
And that's often overlooked in our society today. You don't have to be nice to be helpful.
Right.
I mean, sometimes helping people is by being not nice to them.
Right.
So that they understand.
Work on their own.
Right. But yeah. Yeah. So a lot of growth, and it's really, you know, it's all pointed me to the direction I am now, which I'm very happy of the trajectory and the, you know, the partnership that Dee Dee and I have, the partnership I have with my life partner, AKA wife, who's not technically my wife, but we won't get into that. And my son, you know,
is amazing. They're both amazing.
So I'm very thankful for every day that I get after, you know, after what I've been through. So I would hope that anyone else suffering out there that would hear this would feel the same way, or at least start that path to feel the same way. Cause it does feel awesome, even though it's hard. It's very hard.
Anything worth having is going to be hard work. Right.
Yeah.
Right.
100% true.
When did you discover CBD and it helping you with your TBI?
So I actually discovered CBD. I couldn't use cannabis for a few years after I got shot because just whatever was going on with my neural pathways, it would cause me to hallucinate. And it would cause me to feel very, very strange, almost like otherworldly strange. So I avoided it for years, and then slowly started reintroducing myself about the time I moved to Kentucky. So about 15, 16 years ago, maybe a little longer than that. I've been here so long, this is the longest I've lived anywhere. But anyway, so I started using cannabis, and that was beneficial. And then I became a safety inspector was one of my responsibilities at my last company. So I discontinued cannabis use because I didn't want to be a hypocrite at that time. And then I got to the point where I was, really all of this stuff was coming to a head. And I knew I needed some help because I felt like I was on the verge of getting where I am.
You never got on all the prescription pills or anything,
100%.
Did you?
I got on those prescription
pills. Oh, did you?
pills.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
I was taking everything. Xanax, Adderall, anti-seizure medication, Alzheimer's medication, all that shit that'll kill you.
Wow.
And then that's a whole other podcast.
I know, right.
Because I quit that stuff cold turkey, which was another interesting experience.
Smart, right?
Yeah, that was.
You do things your way, don't you, Matt?
That was different. That was 2 weeks of losing my mind.
Yeah.
But anyway, and so I started using CBD, and it worked. And
It replaced all of those other medications for you.
The other medications were it's ironic because the other medications were actually preventative. Like they didn't want me to have a seizure.
Right.
They didn't want this to happen. So they gave me all these drugs. Well, the Alzheimer's was because I was having some memory lapses at one point that was concerning. But certainly not Alzheimer medication, in my opinion, was not the answer. Anyway. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I took CBD and it tasted terrible, but it worked. And then I found Dee Dee. And I tried her stuff.
And it tastes so good.
And it tasted great.
And it works.
And it worked. So I thought, man, and at that time I'd separated from the previous company I was working for. And I had, a little bit of cash looking to invest. And I saw 502 Hemp and Dee Dee, and I basically begged her to become a part of it. And then once she realized the skills that I could bring to the table, which at first I think she just thought I was a nut or another nut.
We kind of did.
Yeah. But but there were a few people like in our circle that were like, this guy's a legit businessman. He knows what he's doing, or he knows how to make money, and he knows how to do this and do that. I think that's where, Dee Dee's wheelhouse ended, because Dee Dee, bless her, is how can I help, and then, while that's our core value, you also have to make money if you're going to help people. Because if you don't make money, and you can help so many people, and then when you're out of money, you can't help anyone.
Right.
So
you had tried other CBD products and before you discovered 502, or?
Yeah, I did.
Okay.
I did.
I just think it's fascinating. I mean, you weren't thinking of going into like holistic medicine or plant medicine, anything.
Not at all.
You just said, "Hey, I like this stuff."
You know what? The first thing I noticed was that it worked. Right. And it's like, wow, this actually works. And then the more research I did, the more it fascinated me.
And you were bodybuilding and stuff then too. Correct.
Yeah.
So.
CrossFit competition. Yeah. I was doing CrossFit. I'd given up the bodybuilding stuff prior to that. Yeah. But so I had all kind of benefits. It was the oldest medicine, but at the same time, cutting edge.
I know. That's what's
and
so
it was
fun about
super risky, which sometimes that's like what makes my back of the hair on my neck tingle sometimes, because I'm like, oh my God, this is risky, but it's kind of a good risk because this is something I can get behind. So that's kind of where it went. And I had a few concepts that I drummed up and kind of abandoned, prior to meeting Dee Dee. Dee Dee had already had a system. Like she already had her brand out. So allowing me to be a part of that was pretty cool.
I'm glad you found us.
Yeah. So we have gone way past our normal time.
No.
So we should probably wrap this up. I appreciate y'all for listening to this pouring of guts and participation with Beth.
I think it's good for people to tell their story, because people think you just instantly become successful by thinking a certain way or doing certain things. But it's really from the trauma that you went through that kind of pushed you into that. And that's, like he said, that's how heroes are born, is overcoming something and making you stronger.
Yeah.
So we do appreciate you sharing that.
Well, thank you.
Not many people walk around with a bullet in their head.
No.
So you're one of
those things. No MRIs.
Right.
No MRIs for me.
If I ever need to upset you, just bring a magnet and hold it to the back of your head.
I used to set off the metal detectors, but not anymore.
Okay, good.
I think that there's a cyst wrapped around it now.
Tissue, right.
Yeah. And I think that's enough to buffer it out. But I used to set off those every time.
Fun to go to the airport
wave the wand over it and set it right off. So
I know.
Anyway.
Well, we love you for that.
The X-rays are fun.
Yeah, sure.
I love it when I switch dentists.
Yeah.
They're always like, "What?"
Right. Yeah.
Why is that piece of tooth in the back of his head.
Right.
Because that's what it looks like.
I
You know,
know.
like something.
That's funny.
Yeah. Because it's two X-rays are 2D, so it just they're like, what the hell?
I know. What is that? I know. That's
Anyway. All right. Well, thanks for listening, y'all. Appreciate it. Thank you, Beth, for filling in.
You're welcome.
Really appreciate that. And I hope y'all keep it hempy out there and have a great time.
Yes, all the time.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for joining us for another episode of Hemp and Happiness with the Hemp Queen
And Emperor.
Keep your mind ever open and expanding. Like, subscribe, review, follow us, all the good stuff. And
Keep it hempy out there.